Crypto Clay, good to see you, man. Tiger, good to see you. Sorry we couldn't make that work, Crypto Clay. I know it was a bit of a long shot on making everything square, but still appreciated the conversation with you. Super cool. Yeah, a little bit early today. I got to jump off a little early, so I figured I'd spin it up on the early side, get things moving. We're almost all set up. Really interesting stuff happening in the price chart. It's really cool to see XRP reacting the way it is. XRP price chart not doing a whole lot of fascinating stuff at the moment, but what's really fascinating is this XRP to Bitcoin chart. I mean, look at this thing just constantly ascending. You had told me that XRP would kind of get screwed over on the whole reserve thing, and that XRP would keep appreciating against Bitcoin. I think I would have told you were crazy. Doesn't look like the market really cares too much about that. Over the past couple of days, Bitcoin's really gotten whacked, and XRP just holding up really, really well. Guys, smash the like button. You know what to do. Appreciate everyone doing that. Could you link your last debate here, please? Most of them are, I think typically it's when I go on to the X account is dark side. Let me just check that. Yeah, dark side 2030 underscore at dark side 2030 underscore. It's like the Pink Floyd album. No, but I love jumping on there, man. Everyone always thinks like, oh, I get like, it's like a big fight when I go up there, but you know, most of those guys at this point, and it was kind of my strategy, right? It was kind of my strategy. I have most of them at this point. They all know that I know my stuff, so it's really more of a hey, let's start to figure out like why we might be wrong on some of this stuff. It's a lot less hostility than it used to be because they've sort of started to figure out that they don't really know this as well as they might have thought they did. So it makes it funny to go up there and talk with them. There's also two groups of people who go up there. There's real Bitcoin maximalists, like the real, like, the entire world is going to be using Bitcoin and we're going to be paying with everything in Bitcoin and Bitcoin's going to be the only currency. And those people are really losing the narrative quite a bit because a lot of the Bitcoiners have become, in those spaces, at least rational enough to understand that that's not going to happen. So they're also having a hard time with like the whole stablecoin thing. They're starting to see stablecoins really taking over, and they're like, oh, well, you know, why would anyone go pay each other with Bitcoin when they can just use a stablecoin? So they're starting to come to that realization. It's funny. They're just slowly coming more and more into the thesis. Eventually they'll all be holding XRP. But it is funny to watch them slowly go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, the debate should be somewhere on X. I honestly don't know what's recorded and what's not recorded. A lot of these things go on for like 8 hours. Like they're just in these spaces all day, and I'll jump in and out and make comments here or there. The spaces are fantastic though. I will say that outside of like the XRP discussions and some of those discussions that obviously I have pushed back on a lot of their theories there. In terms of the macroeconomics, I think for the most part, there's a lot of great insight there. I actually really enjoy going up on those spaces. Tracy, good to see you. Roger, always great to have you here. Dave Nelson. Can't hurt to ask. Loaded up on Flare and Dag on this dip. That's a solid duo. I'm not sure what the can't hurt to ask was in reference to. Mark Carney getting pushed to PM in Canada. Yeah, I don't know a lot about him. I really don't. I watched like 2 or 3 clips of him. I'll have to dig into a little bit more. My US politic knowledge is like decent at best. Like international politics is definitely not my strong suit, so I don't know a lot about it. I know a lot of people are looking at this as like not a good thing for Canada, but I just don't know enough about it. You know, there's been a lot of times where there's been other people before that people have been very worried about, and it turns out to be very different than the expectation. Does Mark Carney relate to Ripple? I think I missed that. How does that relate to Ripple? Just I see just a quick search brought me that he's pro CBDC. Is there another connection there I'm missing? I believe he worked with Ripple when he worked at the Bank of England. Okay. Carney was at the BOE. Okay, Bank of England. Got it. Very interesting. Okay, I had no idea. Yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time looking into that yet. It came across my feed pretty late last night. And I saw a lot of people kind of just doing some initial remarks on it. Okay, he ran the Bank of England when they did their proof of concept. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, no, that sounds like he probably does know Ripple very well. Super cool. Yeah, I know Canada's always had like a pretty interesting relationship with Ripple also. So all that's lining up in a very interesting way. I'm gonna have to do some more research. Let me see if I can find anything instantly on X about this right now. Look at that Bitcoin to XRP ratio, though. I have that on the screen. Oh, interesting. All right, let's take a look at this. I just found an interesting clip of Mark Carney. Man, I am starving for some reason. All right, let's take a listen to this together. I haven't listened to this, don't know exactly what it's all about, but let's see.
So what's the point?
Give us the thumbnail. Why can't the dollar be the global currency?
Okay, the dollar is the global currency. We know that. The challenge is that the U.S. share of the global economy has been reducing. The dollar's share of payments, not just financial assets, but payments. A lot of payments between countries that have nothing to do with the U.S. are in dollars. And what happens in situations like we're in today, where the U.S. economy, to its credit, is relatively strong, is doing better, and the Fed has been doing the right thing, which is, they've adjusted policy, they tightened policy as it was strengthening. Now they're making, the Fed is doing the right thing, but they have adjusted and policy is relatively strong. That means rest of world policy is tighter than it needs to be, and that feeds back on the U.S. economy in a way that ultimately slows this economy, and it leads to a substandard outcome. And in a world where you only have limited policy space, it's a dangerous place to be. And so the trade issues we're talking about are reinforced by the structure of the monetary system. Now, I mean, you've asked a big question, so just give me a second to, but now the issue is, you don't just jump to something new overnight. And what we want in a multipolar world, I think we'd agree that we've got European engine, we've got the Chinese engine, we've got the US engine of this economy. Multipolar world, you need a multipolar currency. The question is, how do you get there? And I laid out some ideas of how you would get there.
And the bottom line, Governor, is that all of the pressure on the different in growth around the world would not fall on the dollar exchange rate. Yeah. It would be spread out if it was a global basket of currencies.
It would be spread out as a global basket of currencies. It's better for the system as a whole. It's better. It raises that equilibrium level of interest rates.
Right.
It gives central banks more policy, but it gives people who are watching greater returns on their savings.
Well, certainly we're
very interesting. A lot of emphasis kind of on this multipolar world. For those of you who aren't aware, a multipolar world is very good for kind of where XRP sits, because there's two different theses out there. And I definitely lean into the multipolar thesis, but there's one thesis that's very good for Ripple and XRP, and one thesis that's not as good as for Ripple and XRP. And one, I'll say, just like listening to him talk, I mean, he sounds, I don't know if I don't know how Canadians feel about specific policies, but I mean, he definitely sounds like a very intelligent person. So whether or not I agree with every single piece of politics he puts over the finish line, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen Trudeau say something that intelligent. So he at least seems like he's a pretty well-educated person. So the two different theses here are, one, that you just have the United States dollar continue to be the most important cryptocurrency in the most important unit of value in the world, and everyone just uses US dollars because everyone trusts the United States dollar. That produces big economic problems for the United States because, as Mark Carney was just saying there, you essentially make the United States, the entire world, reliant on the United States monetary policy because everyone's using the dollar. The more appropriate thing is for every single nation to have its own currency and then be able to link to one another. And that's where the XRP thesis comes in. It's like, hey, not everyone wants to use the United States dollar, and if everyone's using their own currency, you need a way to interlink all these different currencies. So it's very interesting to hear him talk about that. I think that's the world we're headed into, and it kind of reconfirms that XRP as that neutral settlement asset is going to be extremely important. Jose Crypto, thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. It has been a great ride. Couldn't be more excited to have you here along on that ride. And thank you to everyone who's been supporting me. Really, really does mean so much. Joe Wright says, I listened to you with Darkside yesterday on X. Then when the other dude came in and said there are better things talking about XRP, that was so disrespectful. So I had to turn it off. No, like certain people just get fired up about certain things, and I'm assuming you're talking about Joe. One of the things about Joe that not a lot of people understand is, like, that's just the way Joe is, whether or not he's talking about XRP or he's talking about monetary policy or he's talking about Bitcoin. I mean, that's just the way, that's just how Joe, like, carries himself. So personally, like, a lot of people take it as him, like, attacking me. That's just the way Joe is. And to be honest, it's kind of funny because he doesn't really know the technology as well as he thinks he does, in my opinion. He really doesn't. And that's one of the things that's definitely not a strong suit for him on the tech side. But he is absolutely brilliant when it comes to the interworkings of the financial system. And therefore, if you can kind of get over some of the things where, personally, it's not my favorite way of communicating some of this stuff. But if you can kind of get past that, there is a lot of great insight there. Yeah, Joe can come across a little strong sometimes, but very, very intelligent guy. And if you can kind of see past some of the technical stuff that I don't think he understands that well, his knowledge on the they're saying you're low key a Bitcoin maxi. They just don't understand this stuff, unfortunately, as well as they need to, but they're getting there. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you guys have to understand, I was on those spaces and they were calling stablecoins a scam. So these people, although they've known about Bitcoin for a very long time, they don't really understand the whole cryptocurrency market that well. It takes them a really long time to fully wrap their head around this. Like a couple days ago, every single one of them had no idea anything about stablecoins, and they were all saying stablecoins are a scam. And now they're all talking about how it's going to be Bitcoin and stablecoins. These people don't even understand that if stablecoins are going to succeed, it means that all cryptocurrencies that promote the usage of stablecoins are also going to succeed, because that's the rails for the stablecoins. Like, they haven't yet realized that stablecoins are not their own network, right? Stablecoins sit on other networks. So the idea that stablecoins are going to succeed inherently means that the rails that these stablecoins run on are also going to succeed, right? So they're just slowly moving down this rabbit hole. It is funny because they don't know it yet, but they're already starting to. I've already set the trap on them. I've already set the trap on them. Like it's every single time I jump up there, they come like a little bit closer. They don't realize it. But the other day, Darkside was telling me the importance of instant settlement, and I just started cracking up to myself. I was like, "Thanks, Darkside." If there's anyone you don't have to explain instant settlement to, it's probably me. But it's just so funny listening to them finally wrap their head around the idea of like, wow, it is useful to be able to do instant settlement. And, it's going to keep going and going and going. And then they're going to keep saying, oh, well, you can use Bitcoin for it. And you can use Bitcoin for it, but it's just not good at it. Right? So, and it's important for people to realize the strategy that I took too, I think. My strategy was, Aldous, thank you so much for the $9 donation. He said, thank you for being yourself. No, I appreciate that. No, a lot of people took the strategy, right, that you have to go in there and like start yelling at people and turn it into a big fight and be like, this is why XRP is better. Like, that's not the way you like convince someone that you're right, right? Like, my strategy was always to convince them that, hey, I know more about Bitcoin than you guys. And then they would start to be like, oh, well, I didn't realize this. And then they would start to say, okay, well, maybe there's more that he's right about rather than just the Bitcoin stuff that I thought I knew very well. So it's just a different way of approaching it. Like, no one's been able to kind of bridge that gap because everyone looks at it as like an attack. But most of those people in there, right, they like information, and they do have some allegiance to the truth of how things work. They have a hard time seeing it, but they do have a decent allegiance to the truth. And, rather than going in there and just yelling at people and saying, this is why my coin's better, this is why my coin's better, it's better to educate them on how these systems actually work. Because then they'll start to be like, okay, yeah, maybe I didn't understand this as well as I thought I did. So it's been kind of a fun journey. I already know they're already too down the rabbit hole at this point. Like, they're too curious. They can't get their mind off XRP, and that's not going to change. Right now, they just have a very emotional response to it still. But no, it's already too late. Once you start to acknowledge the use of stablecoins, once you start to acknowledge, you can't be a Bitcoin maximalist and think stablecoins are going to succeed. Instantly, you're not a Bitcoin maximalist because stablecoins will never run on Bitcoin. So it's just so funny to see kind of that realization coming full play. More and more of them are going to get it. The smartest ones are going to be the first to move. And that hardcore Bitcoin maximalist ideology is just going to fade out a bit. Did I have time to change this weekend? Yeah, I got a haircut. I did a whole bunch of grocery, like all like the chores over the weekend. I want Mickle to debate Gary Cardone still. We see Gary is not like. Here's the thing, Gary's not like a real Bitcoin maximalist. Like Gary's a fiat maximalist and he sees Bitcoin as a way to accumulate more fiat. So the problem with Gary is like, and not a problem with Gary himself, but he's just more focused on the price action. And if the price action is going up, he's going to want to be involved. There's not so much of an actual thesis there. Yeah, Charles, DK Metcalf, man. I knew you were going to pop onto the stream to do that. Let's hope we can actually use him. I'm not looking to give DK a 500-yard season. Appreciate you for stopping in, Charles. Oh, I just realized a lot of people are wondering why the live stream is earlier than normal. It's because we just had our time shift in the United States over the weekend. So that's probably why a lot of people are thinking that the live stream is earlier than normal. Yeah, because in the United States, twice a year, we like to just randomly change our calendars. So that's the reason why. I do forget how confusing that probably is for the rest of the oh, never mind. Just checking through X right now, see if anything interesting's popping up. It looks like there was just a pretty big something just happened to Ethereum here. This is a little embarrassing. I don't understand what any of this means, to be completely frank with you guys. But maybe someone in the chat does. Ethereum's Hectra upgrade hit by attack, empty blocks mined after 0 token transfer exploit. Interesting. I don't know what this means yet. Let me take a look at Ethereum and see if Ethereum is facing any pressure because of this. This looks like a relatively new development. No, it doesn't look like Ethereum's price is really being impacted, but looks like there is something going on with Ethereum right now in terms of this exploit. Let's see if I can find anything else on this. Looks to be relatively breaking news. Maybe if I just search PEC, I'll get some information on that. Let's see. Okay, so this was still on testnet. Okay, so this is just a delay in the upgrade they're going to bring. This is still on a testnet that the exploit happened, is my understanding right now. I haven't looked into it too much. Pay it, Mickle, for a good laugh? Oh, play it. Play what? Play what? Most toxic wide receiver group, definitely the Steelers. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure you guys are, I'm not sure you guys are referring to. Oh, Cardone's on Fox. Oh, shoot. Okay, let me see if I can get over quick.
America rather than Europe. Long term, America will be a much better investment because we will get this fixed under the leadership of Donald Trump.
And what do you want to say about real estate right now, Grant?
Oh, this
How
is
does it
Grant
feel to
Cardone.
you where you sit? President Trump, one of his first executive orders, wrote an order about increasing supply.
Much different.
That's one of the main issues here, right?
Yeah, you have to have housing. You cannot get, prices cannot come down if you don't have supply. There's no supply because of regulations.
They're not going to be talking about cryptocurrency, I don't think. They're going to be mostly focusing on the housing market. No, that's Grant Cardone. They do look similar. They do look similar, but that's Grant. Grant's actually pretty open to Grant's very open to the idea of things like XRP. He's got a much different persona. Yeah, no, there's Grant Cardone and Gary Cardone. I believe they're brothers. I don't think they're twins. We can, it's just some people are asking to watch it regardless. All right, we can keep it on.
Already making it possible for Americans to have that American dream again.
And I wanted to ask you, we wanted to ask you to get your take on this Wall Street Journal report, which says that January's deadly wildfires in California are having a major impact in terms of rebuilding Los Angeles. Will be California's economic moment of truth, writes the Journal, as the state faces a housing shortage. Grant, your Malibu home was one of the thousands damaged by the fires. What is the current condition of your home? Where do you see California's real estate market today?
It is a disaster, Maria. Not one thing has been done other than a bunch of talk. The governor has done nothing. You see, this goes back to the same problem we were talking about earlier. If you want to fix a company or department, you get rid of leadership. You cannot make the changes that you need to make with the old leadership that caused the problems. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix a problem with the old leadership was there. Karen Bass should be recalled immediately. They should force Newsom to step down before his term is up. Nothing has been picked up. My entire neighborhood.
Wow.
This includes Altadena, the Palisades, and Malibu. Nothing has even been picked up from the locations.
That's incredible. Well, look, now Newsom has this podcast, right? He says he's got to change the conversation in his podcast. Yeah. But Grant, your 2025 10 Times Growth Conference kicks off next week in Las Vegas. You've got some celebrity guests expected to come. Tell us what you're hoping to gain out of this and what you'll call a success when it's all said and done.
This is the largest business conference in the country. People from all over the world come to this event, and basically they get to experience and hear self-made Americans coming from the bottom without connections, figuring out in different industries how to make it to the very top and then transition and keep continuing to grow over time. This goes back exactly to what you're talking about today. How do you lead? How do you build a culture? How do you stay efficient? How do you maximize the opportunities, whether you're running a business, a small business, or you're running a house?
I'm going to switch off that for now, but no, I actually like Grant a lot. I do always enjoy Grant's insights. He's doing a lot of good work on trying to fix up California, so big props to him on that. No, Grant's a pretty smart guy. Oh, this is interesting. A little piece of counter narrative right here. Thailand's SEC approves Tether's USDT as an official cryptocurrency. Interesting to see that, a bit of a counter narrative thing right there. A lot of the focus has been on Tether sort of not complying, so very interesting to see the opposite. Very, very cool. We'll see how all this plays out, but it does show that certain nations are not going to completely turn their back on Tether. I know Thailand is pretty close to the United States in terms of that SEC connection. Also, interesting to see that their Securities Exchange Commission approving this. maybe saying that Tether is a security in Thailand. Interesting. No, I didn't see Brad Garlinghouse talk at the White House summit. I know he did some posts after, but there really wasn't much talking at all. It was more of a big thank you fest to President Trump, more than anything else. See what else we got coming across the news right now. Not a lot of big action right now in the market. The craziest thing I'm watching right now is just the XRP to Bitcoin ratio performing very, very good, shockingly good. I put this up earlier, but XRP holding up very nicely against Bitcoin right now and putting in a very positive trend since December. Just slowly grinding upwards, which is great to see. Something that personally I have not seen XRP be able to do in a very, very long time. So huge shout out to that. Also, huge shout out to XP Market, sponsor of the live streams. Fantastic website here to go interact with the XRP ledger. If you're looking to learn more about how to interact with the ledger, there's a great season here that kind of puts you on these different missions. Go do a whole bunch of different stuff on the ledger, mint NFTs, do tasks. And also, there's a great way to be able to monitor different tokens on the ledger. We can see right now, relatively red day for the majority of tokens on the ledger. But something I'm constantly watching is just the amount of RLUSD in the ecosystem, up to 23 million, which is really cool to see. We can also take a look at the AMM rankings, and we can see that the number one pool right now is XPM to XRP. XPM is a deflationary token. You can get a look at what that APR is for holding or being in the automated market maker. There is a boosted reward for actually farming the token. So there's kind of a special capability if you are in XPM to XRP pool. Something pretty interesting that I've been sharing on the channel for a while now is just my own personal AMM pool. I've been in here for about, I don't know, like 4 or 5 months. And in that time, I have made a total of negative $4.31. So just goes to show there's a little bit more to these automated market maker pools and just sitting around waiting. But something cool is because there's boosted rewards, I'm able to just collect these right on the interface. And I probably do have more than that P&L is showing because of the boosted reward. So just a couple notes there. Overall, pretty steady growth in that entire part of the ecosystem. Really cool to see. And big shout out to XP Market for being a sponsor of these live streams. Yeah, no, Gary's a good guy. No, I like Gary. Grant, sorry. No, I like Grant a lot. And I don't dislike Gary either. I don't know. Gary's personality goes against my personality a little bit. He's a bit more hostile than I typically like to interact with people, but I don't think he's a bad guy. Something that will affect the price is what I'm waiting for. Settlement, IPO, anything? Yeah, well, that's the way these markets work, right? I'm surprised the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve didn't really do much for Bitcoin's price. I thought that was going to be a pretty significant boost to Bitcoin. But it looks like the market, for the most part, kind of said, you know, this is a kind of a non-factor. Kind of the same old thing we were already doing. So it's interesting to see the way the Bitcoin price chart actually responded to that Bitcoin Strategic Reserve news. Seems like for the most part, it was just pretty uninterested. And like I talked about earlier, just to see XRP still climbing against Bitcoin, this ratio is very, very important. And I don't think a lot of people were expecting XRP to be gaining on Bitcoin despite the Strategic Reserve news. So very interesting stuff here. Very, very interesting. What does the atmosphere need to be like to decouple from Bitcoin? Well, XRP really already is decoupling from Bitcoin in a way that's not typical. If we're to zoom out on this Bitcoin the XRP price chart, and this is the best place to really monitor the decoupling. This is a chart we're paying attention to, and pretty much when XRP is going sideways, it's really coupled to Bitcoin. When XRP is going down, it's decoupled from Bitcoin. When it's going up, it's decoupled from Bitcoin. So right now, what we see is we just had a massive decoupling from Bitcoin, and now we're kind of just in this sideways slow gaining pattern. But you can see pretty easily throughout history the times that we've really had decoupling events. XRP is one of the few cryptocurrencies that really put in these very interesting volatile patterns against Bitcoin. Most cryptocurrencies just constantly decline against Bitcoin. XRP is one of the few ones that's really held its own throughout history. You know, Bitcoin isn't increasing in value and the maxis are attacking XRP on the timeline. Yeah, what's his? Michael Arrington put out an interesting post about that. He's like, for something that's a scam and shouldn't matter, the Bitcoin maxis sure do talk about it a lot, which is very accurate. Like, if they weren't, I don't, like, when I come on these live streams, I don't constantly come up here and start trash talking all these different cryptocurrencies, right? Like, because I don't really need to. I think XRP is going to beat them out regardless. For me, talking about some of the competition is just a little pointless because I don't really see it as real competition. The only reason Bitcoin maxis can't stop talking about XRP is because, like, they see it as legitimate competition. There's no other way to put it. There's nothing else that they're so worried about. And I understand why they are worried about it in terms of their own thesis, but I think it's funny that they try to square the two and say, oh, we're not worried about it, but like, here are all these problems with XRP. It's like, well, if you actually weren't worried about it, you wouldn't have to come out and be constantly talking about it. There's only one reason you're doing that, and that's because you are worried about it. So just kind of a funny little thing there. Do you think we make a new low on XRP? No, I personally don't. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Seems like the XRP to Bitcoin price chart's holding up really well right now. And we've got a pretty strong support here. I think generally there's a lot of people who ran the reserve news, people who now are repositioning. But in my opinion, things are still extremely bullish. Yeah, the OCC news is extremely under the radar. The OCC news is definitely extremely under the radar. Really giving banks the green lights to start working in the cryptocurrency market. Very, very cool to see that. Yeah, no, the OCC letter is massive. And it just goes to show that even if on the surface we have a lot of this Bitcoin maximalist stuff, I mean, at the end of the day, Bitcoin just can't do these things, right? So it's almost better. It just proves we're going to be right over the long run. So I always kind of tell people, like, don't get overly worked up about any of the noise. Eventually the technology is going to sort itself out. Yeah, Trump said he wanted market clarity in August. I mean, it looks like we're getting very close to market clarity. Everything is moving on the policy side significantly faster and significantly better than I ever imagined, which is awesome. Checking out what's going on the feed, it doesn't look like a whole lot of super interesting stuff. A lot of just recap of the weekend right now. Bitcoin maximalist meltdowns all over my feed. That's always funny to watch. And let's see what else there is. Michael Saylor buying more Bitcoin. No surprise there. And yeah, that seems to be the majority of what's going on right now. Anyone else seeing anything interesting out there that we have to talk about? So far, 14 million XRP burnt. Yeah, it's super interesting to see the amount of XRP being burned out of the ecosystem growing exponentially. You're going to continue to see that with more use cases coming to the XRP ledger. I don't know much about XCN. I really don't know anything about it. I do know that it seems to be more of a marketing thing, but could be wrong there. Rocky Mountain Jack, thank you so much for the $5 donation. EU stablecoin CBDC by October. I would not be surprised if that was the case. I think we're moving to a world where we're going to see a lot more CBDC stablecoin development. The funniest thing too about Taylor is the on those emails is like Ripple was correct. So like Bitcoin maxis are only highlighting the fact that Bitcoin was very centralized to China. So for those of you who don't know, there's a big stink over the weekend about Bitcoin being very centralized to China in 2018. And I want to pull up a chart, but I've been having issues with X all morning. It's not loading. It doesn't seem like it's refreshing properly. So I can't get the chart up, but there definitely was a period where Bitcoin was extremely reliant on China. I posted some charts on my X feed. That's what Ripple was pointing out. And it's so funny because the Bitcoin maxis see that as an attack when really it's just pointing out a problem that can be solved. It's a big reason why the problem was solved. It was actually really good that Ripple was able to point that out and bring that to people's attention because that allowed the hash power to move to more United States centric. Yeah, it doesn't look like X is working, and it looks like a massive amount of people just dropped off the live stream from X going down. Yeah, it looks like X is having some issues. With that said, though, guys, I'm gonna jump. It seems like we've covered most of it. My news feed is now dead, so we'll call it a quick morning. Guys, thank you so much for coming. You guys are all incredible. We'll see what happens today. Guys, have a great day. Keep your eyes open. It seems like things